Good morning, everyone. So you know the story about the three mothers who are talking. One mother says, my son is so wonderful, he bought me a Cadillac for my birthday. The other one says, that's nothing, my son bought me a condo in Miami Beach. The third one says, that's nothing, my son goes to a therapist on Park Avenue for $500 an hour, and he's been going for the past 30 years, and all he talks about is me. In this week's parsha we have the Ten Commandments, and the fifth commandment is, the fifth commandment is honor your father and mother. And in the Talmud, there are 613 commandments. Guess which commandment, according to the Talmud, is the most difficult commandment? The commandment of honor your father and mother. And if that's true in Talmudic times, how much more today? Because today, a person's lifespan, the average lifespan, thanks to science, has been extended. So therefore, often parents live 90s, over 100, and the older they get, the more medical care they need, the more attentiveness they need, and so the mitzvah in our generation is maybe greater than any other time, because the responsibilities of taking care of an elderly parent properly could be very, very challenging, and the Talmud recognizes this, that it's the most difficult commandment to perform. But here we find something interesting. In the two sets of 10 commandments, Exodus versus Deuteronomy, there's some differences. And here's one interesting difference when it comes to the Ten Commandments. We know that when it comes to the mitzvah of the honor your father and mother, it says both in Exodus and in Deuteronomy, you'll get long life if you honor your parents. It's the only mitzvah in the Ten Commandments, or in general, that you promised a reward for. But here the Torah adds 4 extra words. It says honor your father and mother, and before it says you're going to get long life, it adds 4 words. Kasher tzivcha Hashem lokech, as Hashem your God has commanded you. The question is, why does it have to say honor your father and mother as God has commanded you to? Obviously, God has commanded you to do all of the commandments, not just honor your father and mother. Why single out this commandment to say as God has commanded you? And the answer is that while it's the most difficult commandment, it's the most logical commandment. If you were poor and you had nothing, and somebody gave you $1 million and gave you a successful life, wouldn't you be always honoring that person who gave you this gift? Of course. Well, when you were born into this world, you had nothing. And everything you have, your parents gave you. If you add up all the money your parents spent on you, all the years of taking care, feeding you, clothing you, education, summer camps, braces, whatever they spent on you, it most probably adds up to $1 million. Especially if they would have put the money in the bank. By now, it surely would be more than $1 million. But they gave it to you as a gift. Shouldn't you pay them back a debt of gratitude? So on the one hand, it's the most difficult commandment. On the other hand, it's the most simple commandment because it's so logical. Of course I owe my parents a debt of gratitude. So the Torah says, even though you may want to do it because I love my parents, I'm grateful to them for everything they did for me, ultimately that's not the reason to do it. You know why you should do it? Because God commanded you to do it. That's the ultimate reason. And Maimonides goes so far to say that even if, God forbid, someone has a parent who's wicked, imagine someone whose parent is in jail because they committed a crime. Do I still have to honor my parents? And the answer is yes, because they're your parents. They're partners with God in your creation. And even if you have a wicked parent, God forbid, Maimonides says, you must honor them nonetheless. Surely if you have wonderful parents. But the ultimate reason to do it is because God commanded you to do so. There's a story, Rabbi Emanuel Feldman, who was a rabbi in Atlanta, tells a story. He built a very big community there. And he's retired now. His son is now the rabbi, Rabbi Ilan Feldman. But in his book about his years in the rabbinate, he says one of the first weeks when he became a new rabbi in Atlanta, his father, who was a rabbi too, came to visit. And he walked into shul on Shabbos, and no one knew who he was. So some guy went over to him and said, Shalom Aleichem, welcome, what's your name? He says, my name is, I forgot his first name, so-and-so Feldman. So the guy says, really, we just hired a new rabbi a few weeks ago, whose name is Rabbi Emanuel Feldman. Are you related to him? He says, yeah, that's my son. He says, really? He says, tell me, are you also a rabbi? He says to the father. And he says, let me set you straight. He says, I am a rabbi. My son is also a rabbi. And we often forget that everything we have comes from our parents. Whatever we like about ourselves, who gave it to you? Who taught you? Who raised you to be that way? They get the credit. And therefore, always remember the mitzvah and the opportunity that we have in our generation more than any other generation. You could look at it like a burden. Oh, we have to take care of our parents in their old age. Well, we could look at it, we're privileged that our parents are living longer than ever. We have more days and more years to fulfill this mitzvah that Hashem ultimately says we will be rewarded with long life.